Hey guys, I'm at home making a video for tonight. Hopefully you guys can hear my voice. My voice is still a little bit shot. This is the first video on the integumentary system. It has to do with membranes because your integumentary system is includes your skin, and your skin is a type of membrane. So this whole first lesson is about membranes. I would encourage you guys to write down the learning objective this one time. This is the learning objective for the whole unit. And it says students can categorize membrane types and explain the functions and pathology of the integumentary system. So this first video is here, and then we have 3 videos on the integumentary system proper, in earnest. And the note outline, we're going to review the CCT000. We're going to review that. We're going to talk about the 4 types of membranes, and we're going to do a killing me softly activity. More on that later. That has to do with this. And I'm going to have you guys eventually talk me through which membranes if this were a sword, which membranes the sword would be passing through. In the integumentary system, we'll talk about why skin is necessary for life, even for you. Has to do with one of the vitamins. How the sun can give you cancer. I'm going to be using a balloon, one of my kids' balloons, to make an analogy for how one of the membranes work today. And we're also going to be talking about, again, one of the membrane types is the skin. Chuck Norris, I have an awesome Chuck Norris poster in my room, Chuck Norris book. I don't know why his shirt is open like that, but it's exposing a lot of his cutaneous membrane, and that's what we're learning about today in class, or on the video. So first off, guys, we are, just a quick review, pause the video, see if you guys can recall the structural organization of the body. So if you guys got that, that was atoms to molecules or chemicals to cells to tissues to organs to organ systems to organism. To maybe make this a little more useful, not just a straight review of those basic names, but a tissue is basically when cells, a bunch of the same cells or common cells, work together for a common function. So if I had to compare this in a culinary way, I would say that a tissue is like a bowl of rice if a single cell is a grain of rice. A tissue is a group of common cells that work together for a common function. So tissue is just a big grouping of that. An organ is 2 or more tissue types working together for a common function. So let's say you join a bunch of different things based on rice. So as an example, if this would be like chef's rice baked in teriyaki sauce, but the whole meal is still based on rice, but there are now other tissue types like the peas and the carrots and the sauce, so not just rice, that are working together for a common function. That is called an organ. And then the organ system is when you have 2 or more organs working together for a common function. So if I had to make an analogy for that, that would be something more complex, something richer to the palate, like a bunch of sushi with rice and meat, uncooked meat, to whatever else you put on sushi. I'm not a huge sushi fan. All the way to a drink that would be based on rice. This would be fermented rice alcohol. So again, TOO, all of that builds from the previous one. So common tissues build an organ, common organs build an organ system. All those organ systems working together builds the organism. So today we're going to be talking about tissues and organs, and probably the simplest organs, which are called membranes. Quick review of last time. I would pause the video and review what are the 4 main tissue types. This was the thing we ended the biology chemistry review on, were these 4 main tissue types. So pause the video, reference your notes. Hopefully you guys got that there is nervous tissue. This is talking about the biceps, the heart, and even your stomach. So skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, smooth muscle. This is all muscular tissue. This one's talking about the epithelial tissue inside your gut, outside your skin. So this is all epithelium, epithelial tissue. Epithelial. You guys bear with me. epithelial tissue. And then the last one was the broadest one, was connective tissue that goes from tendons to cartilage to bone to blood to this adipose fat tissue that they're showing right here. This is all connective tissue. So those four main types of tissues is what we talked about last time. If you guys have a computer, you guys can see a few more details. Please don't write all these details. But this is kind of a review of the slides that were shown last time if you ever wanted to see a little bit more. So the four main membrane types, when you get similar tissues, you can get membranes. That's what we're looking at today. The four main membrane types we'll talk about are mucosa, serosa, cutaneous membranes, and synovial membranes. So this is kind of like the outline of the bulk of this video. So we're going to start with mucosa, we're going to go to serosa, etc., etc. So first type, guys, is mucosa. Mucosa you might think of as mucus. Mucus you produce in your nose, in your throat, and really anything that is open to the exterior. So even your stomach, your small intestine is producing this frothy mucus that helps break down food, helps protect your body. So anything, the one thing I'd write down, guys, well, a couple of things I would write down. Mucosa is the same thing as a mucous membrane. I just use mucosa. I don't say mucosa membrane. I say mucosa or mucous membrane. Where can it be found? It's always in the open body cavities. So nasal body cavity, oral body cavity, digestive body cavity, all of those. Anything open to the exterior needs mucus for protection. Can you find me a tissue? I'm getting kind of sick. That's kind of ironic, but not that funny though. So here's a tissue type. So within the membrane, there are certain tissues that are super common. So within mucosa membrane, you have this type of tissue, which is super common, called stratified squamous. Squamous is an epithelial tissue. So again, this is the kind of tissue that would be on your skin, on the outside covering of you, or on the inside of you in your GI tract. So this picture is a picture of your epithelium in your dermis, your epidermis and your dermis down here. So stratified means multiple layers. Squamous means squashed cells. So multiple layers, squashed cells gives you your epidermis. So a bunch of these squashed cells added up layer over layer over layer over layer means that it protects you. Huge protection from that. So your skin's made of that, your mouth is made of that, your throat is made of that. You need that protective tissue in those membranes. Another type, which is found deeper in your GI tract, is a simple columnar tissue. Simple meaning one layer, columnar meaning a tall cell. So in contrast to the multiple layers squash cell, now we're talking about a single layer. This is a single cell, but it is an incredibly tall column. This is simple columnar. You find this inside your stomach, your small intestine. You have just one layer. It's a real simple layer, but it produces this frothy mucus at the top. I almost think of it like a tall glass with a froth on the top. I'm not a huge beer guy or alcohol guy, but that just made me think of. It's a tall cell that produces this mucus, helps you break down food. So that's another tissue type that's found in the mucosa. So a quick review before we move on to the next type of membrane. The first kind of membrane, if you can recall, we just talked about is mucosa or mucous membranes. It's found lining the inside of open body cavities. So that would be inside your mouth, inside your nose, inside your throat, inside your stomach, all the way through. So that's mucosa. Quick family thing, quick break is this is my wife Nadine. This is my son Luke. He's 10 at Lone Pine. This is my daughter Enika. She's almost 4. She tries to run the house as much as she can. She has super short hair now. It's my daughter Florence, who's 2. And super exciting, this last summer we bought a minivan. I got rid of my old beat up Honda Civic, and we got a minivan. We helped a family move this last summer, and we can actually fit the entire huge recycle bin inside the back, and we didn't have to even put the seats down. Very exciting. I love the minivan. I embrace the minivan. Okay, next one, guys. Next membrane type is serosa or serous membrane. This abbreviates the same way as mucosa. So your serosa is the second type of membrane. It doesn't line the open body cavities. This lines the closed body cavities, like your thoracic body cavity, your abdominal body cavity. All of those are lined by a membrane called serosa. So you'll find that inside your abdomen. You'll find that all the way in your pericardial cavity. This references the stuff from the last test I didn't actually cover on the test, like the pericardium, the pleural. So that comes back in handy. Now, pleural means lung, pericardium means heart. We'll talk about that here. One tissue type that I find particularly interesting in the serosa, within that membrane, here's a tissue type, is simple squamous. Simple squamous, can you guys guess what that means from the last tissue type description? Simple meaning one layer, so this is a single layer of cells. Squamous meaning squashed cells. So this is about the thinnest tissue you can find in the human body. It's a squashed single layer, which means that actually gas can pass back and forth between it easily. So this is what you find in your lungs when you want oxygen to pass through and CO2 to pass the other way. On its way out, it can actually pass straight through that tissue. Makes gas transport incredibly easy. Some words I want you guys to write down or take these notes. There's some word vocab that makes understanding the hardest part of this lesson much easier. This is probably the most difficult part, because we're going to talk about the parietal pericardium, visceral pericardium, parietal pleura, visceral pleura. So parietal is almost like an adjective for this kind of noun. Parietal means outside. Your parietal bone actually means wall. Your parietal bone's right here on the side of your head. Your parietal bone's like the wall of your skull. Your parietal bone is the wall or the outside of an area. Visceral, every time I think about Ross St. Clair, I have kind of a visceral, sick gut reaction when I think of him because of the horror that he's caused the world. So visceral means close. If I have a visceral reaction, I have something that's really close to me. It is kind of a deep hatred. I have a visceral hatred for Ross St. Clair. Yes, his first name is Ross. You never had him as a science teacher at South. Good for you. Second one is pericardium. I should say this determines location. So the membranes will be, there's different types of membranes. Parietal pericardium is one type. Visceral pericardium is another type. The pericardium here is found, you probably guessed it, in the heart. The pleura means by the lung. And the peritoneum means in the abdomen. In the abdomen. So if I say parietal peritoneum, visceral peritoneum, that should kind of give you an idea of where in the body you would go and find it. So I was trying to find my children's balloons, and I can't find them anywhere. We always have balloons. Balloons are like the best toy ever. But I'm going to use this in class. I hope this makes more sense in class with an actual balloon. Oftentimes, if I say parietal peritoneum or visceral peritoneum, it is actually describing the same continuous membrane. We were just talking about a different section of the membrane. So follow me, guys. Imagine with me that this balloon is a little bit like this ball where I'm pushing my hand inside, and my hand's going inside the balloon, not like physically inside. It's just pushing the balloon, so my hand is going inside. The hand is still outside the balloon. And imagine that this is your abdominal cavity. So if you puncture this with a sword, I'm going to be puncturing my way through. I'm puncturing a sword through my abdomen. I'm puncturing my way through my parietal peritoneum. As I go into, say, right through an intestine or my stomach or my liver or my spleen or my kidney or my pancreas, any of that stuff, as soon as I make contact with that organ, I'm hitting my visceral peritoneum. So parietal peritoneum is kind of the outlining of the whole abdominal cavity. But as that membrane curves in and covers all your organs, it turns into the visceral peritoneum. I can apply the same kind of logic to my lungs, to my pleura, to my pericardium. So more on that later. So real quick, pause the video, see if you guys can answer this question. What is the difference between mucosa and serosa? What's the difference in the location where you can find it? What's the difference in tissue type too? So if you guys said a big difference, if you guys can see it here, kind of small on a phone, but your mucosa lines open body cavities, your serosa lines closed body cavities, just like we went over in the schema unit. Some tissue types: stratified squamous, simple columnar, simple squamous. Those are the tissue types I mentioned. Okay, So quick review, first type, second type, again, review to yourself as I'm talking about it. First membrane type is mucosa or mucous membrane. Second type is serosa or serous membrane. Those are the two, we've now covered half of the membrane types in the body. Quick random thing break again. We were hanging out with the St. Clairs. Yes, I know I'm talking about him a lot in this video. This is Ross St. Clair. Again, he was a science teacher, physical science teacher at South several years ago. The root of all evil. This is his son Sawyer. Imagine how messed up Sawyer is going to be when he's older. We were hanging out in their house in Grants Pass. He's teaching in Grants Pass High School now, and they all my daughter Enika, Flo, they were climbing into something in his closet, hanging out, pretending like it was a train. Again, my daughter's the boss. She was pretending to be the conductor. I thought it was a pretty cute picture. So third membrane type, we're moving on to the third one. Now the third one is cutaneous. The cutaneous membrane is what we usually think about, most people think about when they think of the integumentary system. It's the skin. So cutaneous membrane is exactly the same thing as skin. You might be writing it in your notes. Cutaneous membrane equals skin. Whether that's the kind of ideal soft skin of the female, whether that's it, for some reason the ideal skin of the 1980s was like lots and lots of hair. These famous movie stars from the 1980s, Chuck Norris, Tom Selleck, pretty funny. The 1980s was a weird period of time. Cutaneous membrane, what kind of tissue do you find in the cutaneous membrane? Just like inside your mouth, you find the same kind of stratified squamous protective layer covering the outside of your body. So the mucosa is lining the inside. The cutaneous membrane is lining the outside of your body, to make that clear, if that wasn't clear earlier. But same tissue type in both. So this is what we're really studying this unit is you find this stratified squamous of the epidermis combines with this dermis and this hypodermis to create the whole of the integumentary system, which would include hair and these glands and your nails. But right now, I'm just talking about the epidermis, is this cutaneous membrane that includes stratified squamous tissue. Another one that you'll find is that below the epidermis is the dermis. So epi means above. Epidermis, below that is the dermis. And you find a kind of dense connective tissue that has lots and lots of collagen. And we'll be talking about what sun does to collagen and why when you get old you have kind of flabby skin. But for now, another tissue type that shows up in the cutaneous membrane is dense connective tissue that you find right here, deeper in the dermis. Kind of a stretchy support system. So we're done with the third type. Again, review to yourself as I'm talking about it. Mucosa, serosa, cutaneous. Be thinking about which tissue types show up in all three. Be thinking about where you find it. Okay, random family break again. Sorry if you guys are annoyed by this. We went to wildlife safari for the first time. I'd never been to the wildlife safari in Winston. Winston is just south of Roseburg on I-5. We were going to see my in-laws, who I love, in Salem, and we stopped in Winston, made for a long day. My son thinks he's really, really cool. He wants to be called a preteen, but he's only 10. I'm not so sure I should call him a preteen just yet. My daughter, Flo, has super curly hair. I chase her around with a water bottle that has conditioner in it most mornings to try and comb her hair. Painful process. And yes, in this picture, there's an emu that surprised me. I was looking the other way. I turned around. This emu was like in my face. I didn't scream like a little girl, but I kind of ran away like a little girl. Okay, fourth membrane type, guys, is synovial. Synovial membrane is the last of the four membranes we're talking about. So the synovial membrane is basically found in your joints. So synovial membrane is found in your joints to reduce the friction that is produced when you run, when you move your arms. There's a lot of heat buildup, and this synovial membrane on the side, where is that? Synovial membrane is this green guy, if you guys can see this green membrane, holds and contains all of the synovial fluid that acts kind of like oil, like in a car that reduces friction. And so your synovial membrane is useful for joints where friction needs to be reduced and heat needs to be reduced. It can also be found in bursa. And bursa are kind of like airbags airbags around your bones and muscles. and it can also be found kind of surrounding tendons, around kind of the ends of muscles. So that's synovial. Um, find me a tissue for the synovial membrane. The most common type of tissue is a connective tissue, specifically a loose connective tissue. So this is less dense than the bone and more dense than the blood. Again, that connective tissue type has a lot of different types to it. That includes loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue, bone, blood. Adipose is so adipose fat you find all over your body to insulate and support. You also find this adipose fat not just in your skin, underneath your skin, not just in around mammillary glands. But you also find it in those synovial membranes. So fat is necessary. Loose connective tissue is necessary. So now we've talked about all four types of membranes. We've talked about mucosa, serosa, cutaneous, synovial. Again, the mastery level stuff here, the advanced mastery level stuff, is the tissue types, because that's the most difficult to remember. It's the most abstract. The more meats level stuff is the names, is the locations. A little more advanced in mastery are the functions of each, are the parietal and visceral pleura, parietal and visceral peritoneum, all that stuff. That's a little bit more advanced. So we'll have a gradient here. I hope in class I'll make that a little more clear, what I would expect for mastery. And the last thing I want you guys to do, I'm going to end the video real soon. Last thing I want you guys to do is I want you to try and map out what membranes a scalpel, or I would even say a sword, because you would need a really long scalpel for this to work. A scalpel or a sword would pass through your scapula, so kind of through your shoulder, all the way down through your lungs, your heart, your diaphragm, which is the muscle separating your thoracic cavity from your abdominal cavity, through your diaphragm, all the way out through the outside of your body. What membranes is that passing through? And I want you to think real deeply on this one. We're going to review this in class. This can kind of be simple and easy. This can kind of be crazy intense. So what membrane is it passing through right here on the outside of the body, the covering of the body? What membrane is it passing through on this outside of the thoracic cavity? The outside, the inside of the thoracic cavity, the outside of the lung. There's a whole bunch of structures inside each lung that is open to the outside, like an open body cavity. Those are called bronchi or alveoli inside your lungs. Then it passes through this side of your lung, through your heart, through this side of your heart. So I think this is a really good activity to make you think critically about which membranes are actually present there. And there's lots and lots of membranes. It's amazing how complex the human body is, all the way out until it exits your body on this side. So go for it. And I'll see you guys in class.